Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhaktu Sahaviryan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Chaiva Tato Jayamudirayet. Good. Welcome back. We continue our study. This current chapter is a nice complement. Remember, several months ago we studied a chapter, the dialogue between Yudhishthira and Draupadi about karma. In that chapter 31, 32, 33 actually, we got into a very detailed discussion about prayatna and daiva, which is a very crucial topic and to understand karma. But one topic that was not covered in that segment was the topic we're covering now, and that is the distinction between the three kinds of karma. And the three kinds of karma, this is just to introduce today's class. We saw in our last class Sanchita karma. I'll define all of these in a moment. Sanchita, prarabdha, and agami. And we'll be defining all these in today's class. In our last class, we talked quite extensively about Sanchita karma. And remember, the context is this dialogue between the Rishi Markandeya and Yudhishthira. Markandeya, you remember, is a Jivi, which means he lives a long time. How long is a long time? We're going to see in the next chapter that his life spans yugas. He lives from one yuga to the next yuga. So we'll see that in the next chapter. Anyway, Markandeya is extraordinarily wise. I suppose we could make the observation that the longer we live, the more wise we become. At least we hope that's the case. Generally, that's the case. So if you think of someone like Markandeya, who has lived many yugas, how much wisdom a rishi like that must have accumulated in that incredibly long time. Anyway, he's sharing this wisdom with Yudhishthira. So living in a forest, Yudhishthira and his brothers and Draupadi, they meet all different rishis and saints and sages who are coming through the forest. They meet Markandeya. Yudhishthira asks about karma. In particular, remember the introduction, quite important actually. Yudhishthira wonders about the fairness of karma. In fact, he complained to Markandeya. He said, how fair is it that... he says, I always followed dharma, and here I am exiled to the forest, as opposed to Duryodhana, who never follows dharma, and he's living it up at the palace. How fair is that? And so this is the opening question to Markandeya. In response, Markandeya begins this topic, explaining these three different kinds of karma. In the verse we saw in the end of the last class, Markandeya described what we call Sanchita karma. We need to know these terms. In order to understand the doctrine of karma properly, we need to understand these terms quite clearly. Sanchita literally means accumulated. So Sanchita karma are those karmas which you have accumulated. Now, karma's accumulated over what period of time? Well, accumulated through during all your prior lives. How many prior lives? We discussed in the last class. We cannot say there was a first life or a first birth. We talked about the logical inconsistencies By the way, if you miss a class, you know you can go into our website and catch up on anything, because we're not going to review the logical problem with the assumption of a first birth. You can go and listen to it if you didn't hear it. So which means there was no first birth for you, which means how many prior births have you had? Infinite. You have had an infinite number of prior lives, and in an infinite number of prior lives, in each human life, you commit karma and you exhaust karma. Right? By the way, an interesting observation to make. Do non-human animals commit karma? By the way, we are animals, right? So we have to distinguish. Non-human animals don't commit new karmas, because in order to commit a karma, you need free will. And so far as we know, other animals do not have free will. Otherwise, when a lion eats, the example I keep giving is Bambi. Bambi is in the forest. This lion jumps out of the jungle and rips Bambi's head off. Did that lion commit a papa karma? Absolutely not. The lion is instinctive in nature. It doesn't use free will. It's living naturally. So here's the principle. When we look at our past lives, our infinite number of past lives, some of those lives have been in human form. Some of those lives have not been in human form. How's your math? Watch this. Suppose only 1 in a million births is in human form. Suppose you live in animal forms 1,000,000 times, and then once you get a human form. Tell me, if you've had an infinite number of prior lives, and you only get born as a human being once in 1,000,000 times, how many times have you lived as a human? Remember your math? Infinity divided by any number is infinite. So any way you play with the math, you've had an infinite number of lives in which you've accumulated karma and exhausted karma. Animals also exhaust karma, right? Animals can't accumulate new karmas, but animals definitely exhaust karma. A good example of that is a dog born on the street in India versus a lap dog in some wealthy family in New Jersey. Those dogs have very different karmas, wouldn't you think? Okay. So, animals don't accumulate new karmas, animals exhaust old karmas. On the other hand, as human beings, in our infinite number of prior lives, we have committed a lot of karmas, exhausted a lot of karmas, but each life we live, we exhaust some of the karmas. If we do karmas in a given life, by the way, we're going to see this in 2 more verses. The karmas you commit in this life are called agami karmas, current karmas, present karmas. So the karmas you commit in this life are called agami karmas. But what happens is, generally, we die before receiving all of these results. We get some of these results in these lives. We commit the karmas. We get some of the phala in this life, but not all of the phala in this life. Therefore, when we die, whatever phala that remains is accumulated, and that's our Sanchita karma. Accumulated, and what gets accumulated? The unfructified punya and papa karmas get accumulated, and accumulated from how many prior human lives? An infinite number of prior lives. Therefore, Sanchita karma contains, or holds, we'll say, holds an infinite number of punya karmas and an infinite number of papa karmas accumulated from an infinite number of past lives. With me so far? And just to conclude our review, I introduced a brand new metaphor. We've never used it before, but it seems to work quite nicely. And it's like you accumulate food in a refrigerator. So the idea is you put food in the refrigerator and you take it out and enjoy it later. Well, isn't that Sanchita karma? The karma palas are accumulated in this Sanchita refrigerator, and then in a later life, we take those palas out of the Sanchita refrigerator and we enjoy them, we reap the results. So, there are several metaphors. One metaphor sometimes used by other teachers is that of a bank account. You can put money in a bank account and take it out. But let's stay with this refrigerator metaphor. It seems to be nice. So, you have in your Sanchita karma refrigerator an infinite number of punya karmas and infinite number of papa karmas. Before we go on, a good question came, and that is, where is the Sanchita karma stored? Which is to say, where exactly is this refrigerator? That's a good question. Where is that? Yeah, you have a refrigerator in your kitchen. So what about this refrigerator? Now, I'll just mention in passing that in some Puranic literature, Puranas contain the mythological stories. In some of the Puranic literature, they speak of one deity known as Chitragupta, who is the accountant, so to speak, often that's translated as celestial accountant, the one who's keeping track of this infinite number of punya papa karmas. It's a mythological story, no more, no less. So let's understand, without resorting to this mythological story, let's try to understand, where is this Sanchita karma stored? Now, bear in mind, Sanchita karma means what? By the way, that's already a shorthand. It's not karma, it's actually karma pala. Notice our shorthand usage of the word karma in Sanskrit. Sanchita karma pala, it's not the karmas that are stored, it's the results of karmas that are which means the non-fructified palas of purva karma of your past actions. So where are results stored? This is it's a very profound inquiry. What do we mean by results? So if I do a karma, commit a karma, like letting go of my glasses, there is a result. What is the result? It falls. And this result happens to happen immediately. Suppose, however, we wanted to illustrate adrishtapala. Remember our discussion in the prior chapter? The distinction between drishtapala and adrishtapala. Drishtapala happens immediately, like the dropping of the glasses. Adrishtapala is a pala held in abeyance. What is stored in the Sanchita karma are those adrishtapalas. The karmas have been committed, the results have not yet taken place. Now, to illustrate an adrishtapala, suppose I were to commit the karma of dropping my glasses, and suppose, this is again an illustration of adrishta karma, suppose after dropping the glasses they were to remain suspended in air, which means I committed the action and the results are pending. So just imagine now the glasses suspended in air. I've dropped them. The pala is yet to take place. Got it? This is a metaphor. So now the question is, where is the pala stored? This is a good way to explore it. So the pala means the result. The result is the glasses falling according to the laws of gravity. Where is that result? That result is going to take place according to the laws of nature, according to the laws of gravity. So then where is the pala stored? Well, one law of nature is for gravity to cause the glasses to fall. Another law of nature will determine when that pala fructifies. So one is a natural law, law of gravity. The other is we'll call the law of karma. According to the law of gravity, the glasses eventually will fall. According to the law of karma, sooner or later, the glasses will fall. And again, it's just a metaphor, right? To demonstrate the adrishtapala. So, the law of gravity, according to which the glasses will fall, is part of nature. Where is the law of gravity located? Throughout nature, right? The law of karma determines when the glasses will fall. Where is the law of karma located? Like the law of gravity. It's inherent in nature. Scientists would use the term distributed property. How's that? It is a distributed property. It's everywhere. It's in everything. So now we can answer the question, where is this Sanchita karma stored? Where is this Sanchita refrigerator located? One way of saying it is, these unfructified karmas are remembered by the laws of the universe. It's kind of a metaphoric way of saying it, but I think it's quite meaningful. The laws of the universe are going to determine when and how the glasses fall. In the same way, the laws of the universe will determine when and how your sanchita karmas are fructified. So we can say, in a manner of speaking, the laws of the universe remember your karmas. Your karmas are remembered by the laws of the universe, stored in the laws of the universe. We can take this one step further because frequently we understand Ishvara as the intelligent order of the universe. Ishvara's intelligence is manifest in the universe as the laws of nature. I'll say that again. Ishvara's intelligence is manifest throughout the universe as the laws of the universe. So Ishvara's intelligence is manifest as the law of gravity. Ishvara's intelligence is manifest as the law of karma we spoke about a moment ago. So could we not say then, since the intelligence of the universe is remembering your karmas, that intelligence happens to be Ishvara's intelligence, so we could simply say, Ishvara remembers. Ishvara remembers what your past karmas were. So this sanchita karma, the refrigerator, if you want to say where is it, it's with Ishvara. And where is Ishvara? Not stuck in the corner of your kitchen. Ishvara pervades the universe. In fact, instead of saying Ishvara is in the universe, we turn it around and we say the universe is in Ishvara. The universe is in Ishvara. Your karmas are in Ishvara. These unfructified karmas are remembered by Ishvara. This is our sanchita refrigerator. Okay. I think that's enough. We've reviewed our last class and introduced our topic, so we can proceed. So having understood what is sanchita karma, now we have to understand, actually he's going to tell a little bit more about sanchita karma, and then we'll move on to prarabdha karma. Let's see that in the next verse. Tatrasya swakritam karma tatrasya swakritam chayevanugatam sada chayevanugatam palatyata sukharho palatyata sukhar dukarho vapi jayate dukar. Okay, first half we're still talking about sanchita karma. When you put food in the refrigerator, who eats it? Basically, whoever puts the food in the refrigerator is one who takes it out and eats it. That, at least in our metaphor. Swamiji, it's different at our home. Okay? This is a metaphor, right? All right. So in this metaphor, Whoever puts the food in the refrigerator is the one who takes it out. Which means, and we discussed this at length in the last class, we're not going to go in detail, whoever committed the karmas in their past lives, that is the one who will reap the results in future lives. And the one who reaps the results we said was associated with the sukshma sharira. The physical body is not the one, nor is Satchidananda Atma the one, but the agent of action, and this is a big topic that we talked about in the last class, we're not going to repeat it, but we said that the results of an action belong to the agent of action. The agent of action is not your physical body. Your physical body is an instrument. The agent of action is not consciousness, Satchidananda Atma, because consciousness is unchanging, can't do anything. Therefore, who is the agent of action? It's associated with your subtle body, sukshma sharira, the so-called transmigrating entity. Makes sense, of course. So that transmigrating soul, if we want to use the word soul at all, that which travels from life to life, that is the one that possesses the karma, and therefore that is the one, when that soul attains another physical body, then that karma can be removed from the refrigerator, and that's what's said in the first half of the verse. Tatra, there, with regard to your sanchita karma, swakritam karma, that sanchita karma, chaya eva, you have to break the words apart, chaya eva anugatam sada tasya. Tasya, for that transmigrating entity, for that sukshma sharira, the soul that travels, the sanchita karma, swakritam karma, what happens? Anugatam. It follows the person, chaya eva, like a shadow. Nice expression. Sanchita karma follows a person like a shadow. First of all, the metaphor of a shadow, can you run away from your shadow? That's the idea of the metaphor, is that a shadow always accompanies you. You can't get rid of it. In the same way, this sanchita karma always follows you. Once you put it in a refrigerator, it doesn't go away on its own. It only goes away when you take it out and consume it, which means you put at the end of one life whatever agami karma phalas have not been realized, have not been fructified in this life. They go into your sanchita karma phala refrigerator. At some future life, the one who put them in the refrigerator is the one who's going to take those karma phalas out of the refrigerator, so to speak, and reap the results of those actions committed in a prior life. So they're in this way. The karmas will follow you life after life. By the way, it doesn't need to be the very next life. You can put food in the refrigerator and take it out the next day, or the day after that, or the day after that. In the same way, karmas can go into the sanchita refrigerator, and those karmas can come out the next life, or the life after that, or 1,000,000 lives after that. That's the metaphor. Now, speaking of taking food out of the refrigerator is the equivalent, that's what he's going to discuss now, is the equivalent of prarabdha. Let me draw a diagram. This is a diagram some of you have seen. Usually when we study chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, there's a section where we talk about reincarnation. And I usually go through this doctrine of karma in detail then. You may have attended those classes. If you did, this will look familiar. So let this represent your sanchita refrigerator, which means it contains an infinite amount of punya and an infinite amount of papa. Punya, the results of good karmas. Papa, the results of past committed sins. Now, when I like this refrigerator metaphor. When you take food out of the refrigerator, do you take it all out? Or do you only take out as much as you need for one meal? Right? So your refrigerator, by the way, is unusually well stocked. Infinite amount of punya, infinite amount of papa. If you took that all out for one lifetime, how long would you have to live to exhaust all of that papa? You'd have to live an infinite amount of time if you took all of the karma out of the Sanchita. Just like you wouldn't take all of the food out of your refrigerator, you only take as much as you need for one meal. In the same way, when you are born, you take a portion of the Sanchita out of the refrigerator, so to speak. Enough karma you take out for one lifetime. Like taking out enough food for one meal. Here you take out enough karma for one lifetime. The karma that's taken out for one lifetime is called prarabdha. Prarabdha literally means that which has begun to fructify. It begins to fructify with your conception and birth, is when it begins to fructify. And that is the prarabdha that gives rise to this life. So notice it is, pardon the mathematical language, it is a subset. Remember this stuff? It is a subset. I think that would, in a math book, it would be shown like this. So the big one is the Sanchita karma. This is a subset called prarabdha karma, but we're going to draw it like this. So that prarabdha karma then is a subset. It's a portion of the Sanchita karma. And instead of an infinite amount of punya karma and papa karma, it has a finite amount of punya and papa karma, enough to keep you going for 70 or 80 years under ordinary circumstances. That's the idea. Now, what the second half of this verse is going to explore is this prarabdha karma is going to be a mixture, we presume, of punya and papa karma. In what ratio? Because this is subject to, it's a finite amount of punya papa karma, but suppose you have 90% punya and 10% papa. Possible, right? For a life. That would be a pretty good life, right? A life in which most of your karmas were going to be punya karmas, and relatively fewer would be papa karmas. Or, alternatively, it could be the other way around, right? 10% punya and 90% papa. I gave the example of the dog born on the street in India versus the lap dog in Manhattan. You get the idea. And that's exactly what the second half of this verse describes. This is palati, atta, then. Palati, the Sanchita karma fructifies. How does the Sanchita karma fructify? Either sukha arhaha jayate. One jayate, a person is born, sukha arha, fit for sukha. A person is born into a life of sukha. There it is. 90% punya, 10% papa. Va, or dukkha arhaha jayate. A person is born into a life of dukkha, suffering. 10% punya, 90% papa. So this is the fructification of karma. From the infinite store of Sanchita karma comes a finite portion of prarabdha karmas. Those prarabdha karmas are a mixture, generally, of punya and papa karmas, and it's the mixture of punya and papa that determines the nature of this life. Notice I avoided 0% and 100%. Why? Suppose you were born with 100% punya and 0% papa. A life in which there was absolutely no suffering under any circumstances whatsoever. Is it possible to live such a life like that on this planet? No. This is our definition of svarga. Our definition of a life in heaven is a life which was determined by having all punya karmas and no papa karmas. Similarly, is it possible to live an entire human life without even one moment of happiness? Not possible. Even in a, it's been said many times, even in the worst slum you can find, you'll still hear kids laughing. Right? True. So there's no way to live a life without any happiness at all. So therefore, a life where there was 0 punya and 100% papa is not possible on this planet. That's our definition of Naraka, hell. Our definition of heaven is a life based on pure punya and no papa. Our definition of Naraka, hell, is a life based on no punya and only papa karmas. Please note that in all cases it's a finite amount of karma. So if you live in heaven with 100% punya karmas, but it's 100% punya karmas are still finite, which means eventually your life in heaven comes to an end. Similarly, if you go to hell, as they say, based on 100% papa, eventually those papa karmas are all exhausted. Once all the karmas are exhausted, your life in hell comes to an end. Generally speaking, human life is probably more, for most people, closer to 50-50 in general. Close to 50. A joke Puja Swami Tadatmananda used to make. He jokes about, he says, we're all born from a mixture of punya and papa. So he says, therefore, we should all have the same name. What should our name be? Mishra. Everyone should be Mishra. Whatever first name you want, fine. Your last name should be Mishra. Mishra, of course, means mixture, because we're all born of this combination of punya and papa karmas. All right. This is so clear, isn't it, when you see it described? And this is what Markandeya is teaching to Yudhishthira. Where is the prarabdha karma stored? Same place the Sanchita karma is stored. Here we have to give up the refrigerator metaphor, because now you can see we're making these distinctions. So, prarabdha karma. So in this life, you have a subset of the Sanchita karma, which have yet to fructify. In this life, about half of your prarabdha karma has been fructified already. About half remains to be fructified, depending on your age, etc. You get the idea. So the half of your prarabdha karmas, which are yet to be fructified in this life, where are they stored? As we said before, intelligence of the universe. The universe remembers. The universe remembers, Ishvara remembers, however you want, whatever terms you want to use. The intelligence of the universe remembers the results of our actions and ensures then that in some future life or situation we will reap those results. Okay, now we can go on and talk about the third kind of karma, the prarabdha karmas. I'm sorry, agami karmas. In the next verse. Kinchit daivad hatat kinchit daivad hatat kinchit eva swakarma bihi kinchit eva swakarma prapnuvanti nararajan prapnuvanti Mate stvanya vicharana. Mate stvanya. Kinchit daivat. Hatat kinchit. Kinchit eva swakarma bihi. Sound a little familiar? In chapter 33, which we studied a couple of months ago, we saw the same words. The first half of this verse is an exact quotation of what we saw before. What is it talking about? What unfolds in this life? And we said what unfolds in this life is due to a combination of factors. Remember, this was Draupadi's teaching to Yudhishthira about the doctrine of karma. What did Draupadi teach is being quoted here by Markandeya. Of course, if Draupadi is quoting Markandeya or Markandeya is quoting Draupadi, you can figure that out. Or you can simply say, these are Vyasa's words. Which perhaps is the most straightforward way of interpreting this. So what is being taught here? Whatever happens in life is kinchit, partially daivat. Partially due to daiva. Remember our definition of daiva. We probably spent a couple of hours talking about what is daiva. Daiva means what? That which comes from deva is daiva. Who is deva? Ishvara. That which comes from Ishvara is daiva. What comes from Ishvara? Remember we said Ishvara is karma phala data. Crucial to understanding the doctrine of karma. Ishvara is the giver of the fruits of our actions. So, in this life, when our prarabdha karmas fructify, the results of those prarabdha karmas, which are fructifying, the results are given by whom? They're given by Ishvara. Since the results of our own prarabdha karmas are given by Ishvara, therefore they're called daiva. A very common misunderstanding is that Ishvara acts capriciously. He just does whatever he wants. He gives you this, he gives you that, he gives you something else. No way. Ishvara gives us what we have already earned by our past karmas. Ishvara gives us the results of our own past karmas. That's why we call it daiva. Daiva comes from Ishvara, all right, but not randomly or capriciously. Daiva comes from Ishvara according to our prarabdha karmas. So therefore, when Draupadi and Markandeya say kinchit daivat, part of what happens to us in this life is due to daiva. It means what? Due to prarabdha karmas. Then, next part says hatat. We have to break the word properly. Hatat kinchit. Hata is an unusual word here for chance. That which is random. So hatat kinchit. Draupadi and Markandeya both say the same thing, or Vyasa says. Part of what happens in life is due to prarabdha karma. Part of what happens in life is due to chance. When you flip a coin, is it necessary to say, is it heads or tails according to your karma? Wouldn't it be more sense? Chance or randomness is one of the laws of nature. So we would say then hatat, due to the laws of nature which determine that certain things are random. Randomness is part of nature. So some things are born of prarabdha karmas. Some things that happen to you are due to chance, randomness, which is part of nature. And kinchadeva, and also another part is swakarma bihi, due to your own actions. These are the three factors. Earlier we had used the words daiva and prayatna. So daiva we have here. So part of what happens in life is daiva, which means due to our prarabdha. The other part, the term we used before was prayatna, And that's referring to this, swakarma bihi, what you do from your own actions, your own efforts, prayatna. So we had daiva and prayatna before. We have daiva and prayatna again. And the actions that you do in this current life are the agami karma. So here we have three factors. What is it that determines what happens in this life? One factor is the unfoldment of your prarabdha karmas. Another factor is laws of nature, which are sometimes random. And the third factor is the actions you commit in this life. We discussed this at great length before, so we won't say anything further here. But we do need to take one more step. So this is important. Suppose you really got lucky and you got this life. 90% punya, 10% papa. But we said what happens in this life is partly daivat, but also kinchit swakarma bihi. So which means your own actions also count in this life. Suppose you got lucky, you got 90% punya, 10% papa, but suppose in this life you commit only papa karmas. And a lot of those papa karmas are going to fructify in this life, which means you can take this ratio and turn it around. If you commit a lot of papa karmas, even if you're born with mostly punya karmas, if you only commit papa karmas, you can turn this ratio around. It can be 10% punya, 90% papa. Similarly, suppose you got a really miserable life. Think of someone who's born with a congenital disease. This might be a fair example. Someone who's born with a major disability. Being born with a major disability perhaps can be understood with this kind of prarabdha karma. Mostly papa, only some punya. But then, even that disabled person has free will. And with that free will, they can commit punya karmas and gradually shift this ratio. A good example, I don't know how good it is. I think of someone born with this Down syndrome. So being born with Down syndrome is not great. You know, there are many worse situations, but still it's very difficult. But suppose this child with Down syndrome, some of them act in such a loving manner. And acting in such a loving manner, they do so many punya karmas to others, and then they end up living wonderful lives. Are they living a wonderful life because they were born with Down syndrome? Or are they living a wonderful life because of the good karmas they commit in this life? So you get the point that we have to, if we're looking at a given life, we can't look only at prarabdha, nor can we look only at our own actions. We have to look at both. We have to look at the results of our past actions and the results of our current actions. Agami refers to the actions that we choose to commit in this life. So, in this life, we also commit agami karmas. In both of these lives. And then, having committed new karmas, when we die, not all of these agami karmas are fructified. Generally, this is a little technical, but you'll get this. When we die, generally, 100% of our prarabdha karmas are exhausted. Generally. So you're given enough prarabdha karmas to live for 80 years. When those 80 years worth of prarabdha karmas are over, you die, which means under normal circumstances, all of your prarabdha karmas are exhausted at the end of your life. However, the new karmas you commit in this life, the agami karmas, there's no rule that says all of the results of these agami karmas should be fructified. So, at the end of this life, whatever agami karmas remain, whatever newly committed karmas which have yet to give their results, whatever unfructified results of agami karmas, whatever unfructified results remain, they have to go to a future life. Now here's the key. How do they generate a future life not like this? Suppose, but you won't do this, and this is not a great metaphor. Suppose you take food out of the refrigerator, and you take food. Oh, this is good. Watch this. You take food out of the refrigerator, and you also cook some new food. Perfect. You following this? As I said last week, I've never used this metaphor before. It's kind of fun to play with it and see what happens. Okay. So, when you're preparing a meal, part of the meal comes out of the refrigerator, prarabdha karma. Part of the meal is freshly cooked. At the end of the meal, whatever food came out of the refrigerator, you either have finished it or you've thrown it away because you're not going to eat it again. But of the newly cooked food, you eat some of it, and some of it you don't eat. So whatever you don't eat of the newly cooked food, where will it go? Back to the refrigerator. Notice it doesn't directly go to the next meal. Are you going to leave it on the table overnight? You're not going to leave it on the table overnight. That food will go back to the refrigerator. So in a given meal, part of the food is leftover, comes from the refrigerator. Part of the food is newly cooked. This really works. I like this metaphor. Which means part of what happens to you in life is due to your prarabdha karmas from past lives, and part of what happens to you in this life is due to the agami karmas, the karmas you commit freshly in this life with your prayatna. At the end of this life, the prarabdha karmas are exhausted. Some of the agami karmas are exhausted. Some are not exhausted. Those agami karmas which are not exhausted end up accumulating in your sanchita karma. Now this is the actually to introduce the next verse now. Oh, let me finish. Let's finish this verse, and then I'll introduce the next verse. So we've seen the first half of this verse. Whatever happens to in us in this life is partly due to daiva, due to Ishvara giving us our prarabdha karmas. Hatat kinchit, partially due to chance, laws of nature, which include the laws of randomness. And kinchit eva swakarma bihi, part of what happens in this life is due to our own actions, our own efforts, our own prayatna. In this way, Rajan, O king, Markandeya addresses Yudhishthira, in this way, naraha prapnuvanti. In this way, naraha, people, prapnuvanti, obtain this life. They obtain experiences in life. Ma te astu anya vicharana. Anya vicharana, any other way of thinking about this, ma astu te. You shouldn't consider. Let there not be any other way of interpreting this. Markandeya basically says, this is what it is. Don't think about it in any other way. This is what it is. Ma te astu, let there not be anya vicharana, any other thoughts about this. All right. Then, this idea of what unfolds in this life being due to these three factors, we've discussed this in some length using that river metaphor. Can I share with you another metaphor that I've used long ago in describing this topic? I guess this topic comes up again and again. I've taught it many times. Let me give you another I think, a very helpful metaphor in understanding the relationship of these three factors. How do these three factors interplay in our lives to create the lives we live? So here it says, partially due to daiva, which means the unfoldment of our prarabdha karmas, partially due to chance, partially due to our own efforts. And the metaphor, I haven't used this for many years. I think I remember it okay. I don't know if I need to draw a picture. I don't need to draw a picture for this. I don't know if you watch. I happen to be a little fascinated by when they shoot these rockets up and launch satellites and launch things. I've been watching this SpaceX company. I just find it fascinating. So this is a small startup company, and they're starting to launch. Anyway, they're doing a lot of good work. I'm a little fascinated by all of this stuff. Think about launching a rocket. What's involved in launching a rocket? How much prayatna? Okay, let's try to identify some of this. I guess we will draw a picture. Here's, by the way, this is a bad picture of a rocket. How's this? This is a rocket. So, the rocket has an engine on the bottom with a lot of thrust. That thrust is prayatna. You see where this metaphor is going? So the thrust that comes out of the rocket represents the effort we make in life to reach our goal. So the goal is someplace out, say Mars. The founder of this SpaceX is Elon Musk. Some of you know about him. His goal is to make it to Mars. Now Mars is a long way away. Yeah, he wants to make it to Mars. How much thrust will it take from a rocket to make it? It'll take a lot of thrust. In the same way, we have goals in life, like maybe not going to Mars, but we have lofty goals. How much effort will be required to reach our lofty goals? A lot of effort. All right, but the point is, effort alone is not enough. If Elon Musk launches a rocket with lots and lots of thrust, is his rocket going to find its way to Mars, given the fact that there's lots of other factors affecting the route of the rocket? Factors like what? How about gravity? The gravity of this planet, the gravity of the moon, the gravity of Mars. So depending on the effects of gravity, that will affect the route of the rocket. Notice then the route, R-O-U-T-E, the route of the rocket is determined not merely by its thrust, but also by gravity. In the same way, what unfolds in your life is determined not only by your efforts in life, your prayatna, but also by this unseen force. Gravity is an unseen force, which is why it's a good metaphor. Just as gravity is an unseen force affecting the rocket, there is an unseen force affecting us all in life. What is that unseen force affecting us in life? Daiva, which is the unfoldment of our prarabdha. We talked about this at great length in a prior class. I don't think we need to go much further into it now. So due to this unseen force back in the metaphor, due to the unseen force of gravity, this thrust alone is not sufficient. So what has to be done? Well, I'll drive you crazy. They have other thrusters. to make fine-tune adjustments. This is real. They actually fine-tune the direction of thrust after the rocket has lifted off. Which means it's not like firing an arrow. When you shoot an arrow, you aim first and then you let go. Which is why, how often do you hit the target like that? Not very often. But the way rockets work is much more sophisticated. Imagine once you release the arrow, suppose the arrow could adjust itself in flight. That's exactly what rockets do. Once the rocket takes off, the rocket is programmed. There are a bunch of computers on these rockets. The rocket is programmed to compensate for the effects of gravity so that it can make it all the way to Mars. This accurately describes what happens to us in life. And that is, in life, we use our effort to go in the right direction to reach our goal, but then we find all kinds of unexpected factors arising in our life. We talked in the prior example, the current of karma. In our prior example, here it would be like the gravity affecting the rocket. In the same way, so many factors, unknown, unforeseen, unpredictable factors arise in our life and threaten to prevent us from reaching our goal unless we make the necessary adjustments in our effort. This is such a crucial teaching because some people wrongly feel that if the prarabdha karma in your life is not conducive to you reaching your goal, you're finished. Well, who says? Whoever said that? Who taught that? That's absolutely wrong. What it says, what's properly understood, is yes, we may have some prarabdha karma, some daiva, which is threatening to throw our life off track. What do we have to do? Compensate for it. And we do this every day without even thinking. We make these adjustments. Just a silly example. If you're driving to work, and one road is totally congested, what do? Take another route. Well, that's adjustment. So one road being congested is like prarabdha obstructing your path. So what do? You decide you give up. You say, I'm not going to work today. I'll go home. You don't do that. So if one road is congested, you'll go and find another route. You will make adjustments in life. So far this is our rocket example. One effort is our prayatna is represented by the thrust. Gravity represents the unknown factors that happen in our life. But crucially, this process of making adjustments. And these adjustments are made continually. The rocket is continually comparing its course to its target. Let me show you. So suppose its target is here, and its course is here. What the rocket does is it measures the error and compensates for that error. The rocket does that continually monitoring its progress, continually making adjustments for any errors that come up. Does that sound like a good model for our life? Of course. So we are constantly buffeted by all kinds of unseen, unpredictable factors in life, and we are constantly adjusting for all of them. Now, there's one more factor that this verse talks about. Hatat. Hata. Hata here means chance, randomness. And this rocket example, the river example didn't work for this. So if you remember when we talked about that in the prior chapters, we didn't talk much about hata, chance. This is perfect because in this rocket is a gadget which has a failure rate of 0.001%. It has a failure rate, which means what? It means once in 1,000, Thus, means once in 100,000 launches, this gadget will fail. They actually, by the way, when they build rockets, they actually use numbers like this. They have to calculate the failure rate of each object, like the tires on your car. The tires on your car, every time you drive your car, there's a finite possibility that you might blow out a tire, right? It can happen anytime. There's a finite possibility that a tire will fail. In the same way, for this gadget on the rocket, there's a 1 in 100,000 chance that this gadget will fail. Well, what does that mean? It means once in a great while. In fact, a year ago, Elon Musk's rocket made it up into the sky, a kilometer or two, and then it blew up. The entire rocket was lost. Why? There was a gadget in the rocket which had a small chance of failing. It's a little more complicated than that, but just to stay with our metaphor. The gadget failed, the rocket failed. This is a possibility of chance, and chance is also a factor that determines our lives. Let's get real. Each and every one of us have a small possibility of being diagnosed with terminal cancer. How to understand that diagnosis of terminal cancer? Could be prarabdha karmas. Possible. But then we also know that the laws of nature include this randomness. And in the medical field, they actually have statistics that can tell you what are your chances of getting a particular kind of cancer. Now with all the gene research, they're even getting further. If you have this gene, you have more of a chance or less of a chance of getting a particular cancer. This is to illustrate that there are, in addition to prarabdha karmas and your own prayatna effort, there are other random things that can happen in life. Someone who gets struck by lightning. Do you really say it? Look at this is conventional thinking. Somebody is struck by lightning. It's their prarabdha to get struck by lightning? Doesn't that sound a little far-fetched to say that someone's prarabdha was to be struck by lightning? Is it possible? Absolutely. It's absolutely possible that you could explain dying of a lightning strike could be explained. By the way, lightning strikes are much more likely than you think. You are much more likely to die of a lightning strike than you are to win a $500 million lottery. The statistics are really clear. You probably have thousands of times better chance to get struck by lightning than to win one of these huge lotteries. So, which means it happens. So, if somebody is struck by lightning in some just bizarre situation, we could imagine that it is due to prarabdha. We have no way of proving it, no way of disproving it. On the other hand, lightning is natural or not. And laws of nature include randomness, and randomly people are hit by lightning. Of course, we can do something to increase the odds or decrease the odds. So if there's a lightning storm, you go inside, you'll decrease the odds. If there's a lightning storm, you go find the tallest tree and hug it. Then you will increase the odds, but it's still statistical. So here's the point. In this verse and the verse, we saw the same half of the verse in the prior class. Hatha, or chance, is included in understanding what happens to us in life. So instead of just two factors, daiva and prayatna, daiva representing prarabdha given to us by Ishvara, we can expand it, as it's done in this verse, to daiva, prayatna, and hatha. Hatha meaning chance, randomness. Okay, so now you have really quite a detailed understanding of the doctrine of karma. We have just a little bit left on this chapter. We'll see it in the next class. And I think we'll also begin the next chapter after that. So you can go to if you want to get the slides are available on our website. Okay, we'll finish this chapter in our next class. And a couple of quick announcements. Tomorrow, Sunday, our Gita at Work study group meets at 11 a.m. You are welcome to join. At 6:15 p.m., I conduct a satsang, question and answer. You're welcome to join us. Library will be open after class, and we'll conclude with our prayers. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.